Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Today I'd like to visit with you about facing the truth of Indian schooling. I prepared a PowerPoint to lead through this presentation. The first one we have here says, Facing the Truth of Indian Schooling. This slide here tells us pretty much what's going on with Indian schooling. Most of our children do not fare well in the system. The ad agency of White and Kennedy that does ads for the American Indian College Fund for the tribal colleges says that their data that they research says that 1% of Indian children will graduate college, 1%. And that is something that we just seriously needs to be addressed if we're going to go forward. Here's some data that we have that just came out. This is from the data from 2009 to 2014. It's the graduation rates in South Dakota. This graph here shows us that in the last year, 2014, that 46.98% of the students that went through the process, K through 12, 46.9% graduated. That means that a lot of our Indian people will not have attained a good level of education, which means that they will be having a pretty tough life in this economic world that we live. So this is something that we really need to address. We need to do something about this. This is, I'm just going to give you some data about this schooling dilemma that we have in Indian country. This is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This comes out every 3 years. They do a assessment of all the schools in America, every one of them that take these tests, and then they compile them and they tell everybody, each state, where they are, as well as the ethnic groups that are there. This is the percent of Native American fourth graders. This is in regard to proficiency. In 2013-14, if you look at this data, it says South Dakota that about 11% were reading at grade level at fourth grade. In North Dakota, where I am from, it says that we're about at 14%. This is educational data. This is out there. You can look this stuff up on the internet. It's published and out for information for the public. This one is the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA. This is a graph that shows all the countries, the industrialized, so-called industrialized countries in the world that have schools. In other words, they have formal education going in the world. They do this. They just randomly take 15-year-old students from these industrialized countries and then test them. They're usually juniors, and then they see where they land. As you can see, America is down toward the bottom. If you look at that, we're about average. The schooling system that we have is about average. Ones below us, there's ones ahead of us. There's various ways you interpret this data, but one of the latest ones I've seen said that we rate 38th. In other words, the formal schooling system that the United States puts out there rates about 38th in the world. What does the research and studies tell us about how well the K-12 has worked for Indian children? If you take a look at the most famous studies that have been done that have looked into this situation of schools for Indian kids, in 1928 was the first one that came out. it said that the schooling was deplorable. It was psychologically damaging. The final analysis, I guess what you would say, that the Merrim report came out and said was that when we start educating, in other words, the United States government, when they start educating our kids, they should take into consideration a different point of view. In other words, that these children should not be just put through a regular system that everybody else is. We should have another look at it. We should think of doing something else. The next famous study is the Kennedy report. This came out in 1968 and said that, I think the tagline for it was saying that the national education situation was a national disgrace and tragedy. If I go on here, this is the Nations at Risk study. This is the one that was done, I believe, in the 1990s, 92 or so. And it just said that when you take a look at schooling and what it's doing for our children that grow into adults, it says that the schooling is putting our kids at risk. It's putting the nations at risk, our Indian nations at risk because of the low level of attainment in schooling. This was one that President Clinton formulated, and it was the White House Conference on Indian Education. This was done in May 1992. It came out and said that Indians should have control over their education. They should have more input into it. Basically, overall, that's what the report said. This is a study that was done in 2010 by John Tipiconic at the Pennsylvania State University. Said that the dropout graduation crisis among American Indians and Alaska Natives, said it was a failure to respond to this schooling dilemma places the future of Native peoples at risk. That was in 2010. So in all, these studies and this research seems to say that there's something wrong with this system that we are our children are going into. This is a cartoon that just says that, basically the K-12 system, it takes kids, puts them through a system. It kind of knocks out creativity, discipline, and intelligence, and puts them through a system, and they come out, they graduate. In Indian situation, we don't come out of that very well. Like we said, there's 46.98% in South Dakota don't do it, but do well. But this is indicative of Indian country across America. We do not perform well in this system. Where does this system come from? It was developed in 1892. The United States government, when it first started putting this, what should we do as a national education, they got together the smartest guys they could, the most intelligent guys in schooling, called them the Committee of 10, and they put together what we are doing today in our schools. What we do today was formulated and put together, designed by these 10 men in 1892, not 1992, but 1892. In all of this, I guess we got to say that there is no scientific research that supports K-12 is a good way to learn. I say that this is just overall, the whole system. What's wrong with this system is this. Schools place students in rooms by age. They put them in classrooms. 7-year-olds generally go in second grade, and so forth. Then they give them specific subjects in timed intervals. So the classes, the day is broken up with subjects being given at 9:10 to quarter to 10. Then they go on to another one. After a while, then they take this. Then the next day they come in, do the same thing, give them more information about the subject area, and then after these timed intervals, they test them for mastery. And then after that, they label them. This system of doing this that we do in America doesn't have very much, I guess you'd have to, we say that it's based, it just is not a very successful model of learning because there's so much that goes on. If you have 10 children in a classroom and you teach them, let's say, some spelling words, and then the next day you take these 10 kids and you give them more spelling words, and you go on, and the next day you do more, or you do it in any subject area, history or whatever it would be, math, some kind of social science, but whatever it is that the subject is, in, say, if it's a 45-minute class, some of those kids get it. So let's say 5 get it, 5 don't. You go on to the next day, 5 get it, some don't. Next day, 8 get it, some don't. Next day, and so forth. And then they test you to see how well you do. The fact of the matter is that as you advance through that, when kids are not picking up the skills initially, and as the years go by, these skills that you need to do more advanced work, if you don't get it right off the bat, it becomes a deficit. It keeps going, and pretty soon, as you go on through the schooling years, you find a phenomenon of kids coming up at 7th grade that are being given material that they're supposed to be able to read and understand, and because they haven't done well, weren't given time, the correct time earlier on, they're not very proficient at it. And so I just say it's not a very good system, and I'd ask anybody that might refute this, and I sincerely mean this, please, I'd ask for somebody to research and tell me that this is a good, successful model of learning. Because even in America, you would say that there's about 35% of the population in America, the students drop out of school. They don't get it later on, and pretty soon they don't like being labeled, they feel inadequate, so they bail out. Indian children, it's much higher. So, it just doesn't seem to be a good system of education. I'd like to say, somebody tell me that it is a good, successful. It may be for some of the, on a bell curve, you might say A's and B's, it's okay for them, but what about the rest? We'll get to that. This is the way it works. K-12 performance by percentage for Indian students. By and large, when you get these kids in the classrooms, we might say 10% get A's and B pluses. 25% gets B's, C's, and D's. And then there's a bunch that don't do well at all. In other words, they get D's and F's. And then the worst thing is that for Indian children, as you go through and you progress, and just like the data sheet that was shown, the illustration that in South Dakota, 46.898 drop out. So that means it's not doing very well for us by any means. I'd like to just go on to this, that this is on December 10th, 2015, the Senate passed Every Child Succeeds Act. This was supposed to be the end of No Child Left Behind era, the era of a policy that says one child, one size fits all. In other words, the system that we have is good for everybody. And what we do here, they should be advancing. And if they don't advance, then there's a way of testing them and labeling the school, labeling the state, labeling everybody. Anyway, that whole system of that feeling that everybody, this one system should fit all, that is pretty much debunked. There was a large outcry over the years since it was passed. I believe in 2000, 2001 was No Child Left Behind Act was passed by this United States government. I just want to go on and say, is No Child Left Behind dead? Is it done? This way of taking all this information, putting in our children, making them all do the same thing, learning the same thing, is that process dead? Well, I got to say that it's not. I would say that right now, these are the laws. These are the old laws, and they will have to be changed somewhat. But the federal law is for Indian government schools, grant schools that are operating on Indian reservations. This is 25 CFR 30 of the Code of Federal Regulations that govern Indians. It says that the Department of Interior codified law mandates BIE schools will follow AYP rules and regs of No Child Left Behind. So now that law is gone, and you have Every Child Succeeds Act that has placed it. But right now, I got to say that law, 25 CFR, is still in place. It is still operating. They have a rules-making committee that they're forming, and they'll have to change that law, the Code of Federal Regulations law. But right now, pretty much you'd have to say the laws that were in place by No Child Left Behind are in place now. There's a new law here, but it's pretty much following this other stuff. As far as public schools operating on Indian reservations, they're operating under No Child Left Behind, Section 111, 1111. And in this law here, and this is the way, if you read the new law, it says pretty much the same thing. It says it is that any school receiving United States Department of Education title money, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, Title VII, Title IX money, will have to follow state AYP or standards and curriculum and testing of the state. That's in place. So in other words, Indian country is following state and federal laws in regard to how to educate our kids. In other words, that system that is not doing very well for us is in place and is still operating. This is just, this was in the New York Times. It looks like it's October 15th, 2015, just months ago. It says Obama administration sharing the blame, calls for limits on testing in schools. In other words, the first law, No Child Left Behind, wanted to test everybody to see where they were for accountability. And you could be dinged if a teacher wasn't performing well, if the school wasn't performing well. It kind of puts you in trouble. In this article, it says that schools were testing kids 112 tests per year. I got to say that this is probably true. The teachers really want their students to perform well, to make themselves look well. So they test, and they test, and they test. So they give them this content, and then they test them to how well they know. There are kids that get it. God bless their souls. There are some that aren't, I guess, academically inclined in some ways, and they don't get it. God bless their souls. But nonetheless, they do get labeled, and the whole school gets labeled, and the whole system. So he's saying they got problems with this, with testing. And there are, around the country, just have to look up opting out of testing. States are going against testing. There's all kind of literature that's coming out, that studies that saying it isn't any good. And this article says that there's no proof that testing policy is good. This testing is the best school system. One of the best school systems in the world is Finland. They do not test. They assess their children, but they do not put them through a formal testing procedures. That's done in a classroom to see how the child is progressing. But they are never labeled or anything. They just want to bring that child along. In this article, he says that they advocate for one test per year. U.S. lags far behind other countries. And that's what I said. We're about 38th in the nation. The National Assessment for Education Progress says that there is no proof that more time on test improves academic performance. Common Core testing reduces teacher ineffectiveness and creativity. That's just what Obama's sharing the blame. So it seems to debunk that not just for Indian people, our schooling system in America is, average, and it could be improved. This is a research article done by the very esteemed educator Sandra Fox, probably one of the most astute and learned person in America on that I'm aware of that knows the stuff. She worked for the BIE, then she did a lot of literature, and she's done a lot of positive things to try to get schools to do better things. But what she says is that these policies, these laws that are in effect put American Indian students at risk. Here's the dilemma, though. If you want money for your school, you better do what we say. So you have to follow these laws. Riding a dead horse. This is what we know. We know that this is not working. So, this is there's some sayings about this that our older people say. When you're riding a dead horse, when you discover you're riding a dead horse. There was a chief that said this. Forgive me for not knowing the quote exactly, but this is what he said. When you discover you're riding a dead horse, it's time to dismount. Well, our Indian country, at some point in time, we have got to realize that we're riding a dead horse. Now we need to be looking at other things. For instance, this is our beautiful way of understanding everything. This is, Sitting Bull said this. It is through a mysterious power that we have our being, and we therefore yield to our neighbors, even to animal neighbors, the same right of ourselves to inhabit this vast land. That is a beautiful philosophy of life, and we are the holders of that, of those traditions, those customs, that heritage that holds that. And this is what we can offer to the world. Do we do this very much in our schools? Most schools, they're sincerely trying to address this right now. They do 95% of what they do is what the state and the federals ask them to do, this K-12 curriculum and process. We do offer a little bit of culture, a couple times a day, maybe once a day, or language or culture is offered, but not very much. This is something we need to address. This is what Wilma Mankiller, a very profound Indian modern leader, she says, I don't think that anybody anywhere can talk about the future of their people without talking about education. Whoever controls education of our children controls our future. Clearly, on Indian reservation, and in Indian country, a tribe has virtually no say in the process. Grant schools, those schools are made to follow state AYP standards, testing, and curriculum. Public schools have to follow the same. Even though they operate on Indian reservations, the tribe has virtually no say in it. They can say things, but actually what goes on and is administered to our students in our schools is foreign. This is President Obama. He came to our reservation and he said, let us put our minds together to improve our schools, and that means returning control of Indian education to tribal nations. This is what he would like to do, but it's a lot easier said than done because the laws are controlled by Congress. He can say these things, and him and his administration have to follow those laws, or they can get in trouble. So we have education laws, and in there, he is suggesting that these laws be changed and be allowed to give Indians control of education. This is the former chairman, Oglala Sioux Tribal Chairman, Brian Brewer. This is what he says. What I believe should be the ultimate role of the BIE, the Bureau of Indian Education, is to encourage tribes and tribal communities hot spit to control their schools, to do it on their own. It's so I guess I put this in there wrong, but apologize for this. So what do you do? So what can you do about this? I have some real exciting news right here. I just got to say this is a development that's just happened within South Dakota, and there is some really good news that's coming out right now. This is an executive order that was done by the South Dakota Governor Dennis Dugard. He says that he passed this in order to get some money that would form an advisory committee to explore alternatives to traditional education. Why he did this was him and his Melody Shop They took a look at this situation, and they said, over all these years, we have to do this. We have to do something. We have to take a look at possibly something else that we can do that can create success for our Indian children. This was in February 2nd, 2015. A little over a year ago, he put this out. It's really exciting stuff. Just this past March, I forget the day, I should have posted this up here, but it'd be something like March the 15th. The South Dakota State Legislature passed the PISA registration school bill, 94-9. 94 senators and House representatives of the state legislature. Now, these are older gentlemen and women that are, you'd say, are pretty conservative. But they passed a bill. They recognized that in the committees, the hearings, I testified there, in these committees on both sides, and I was kind of astounded because I advocate for change, to do something different. And when we were trying to get this bill passed, we were trying to get awareness for it so that they would hopefully vote in favor of it. I was surprised to, maybe I shouldn't have been, but these people on these education committees on both sides, the House and Senate, were very aware of the problem and that there are things that can be done differently. Passed. That's big, big news. The state of South Dakota, which has a history of a lot of racial tension, and here we go, the state of South Dakota legislature passing a bill that wants to explore change. And I'll explain that a little bit. This is, I apologize, I don't have Dennis Dugard's picture. This is Jack Dalrymple in North Dakota. He's the governor up there. This is my son, and I would say I have to give my son the credit for this. He met with this Jack Dalrymple, the governor, and told him the same thing. He said, if we are living in North Dakota, part of our reservation is, and if we want to go forward, and you would like to see our people go forward, we've got to do something about education. This is my son with President Obama in Cannibal, North Dakota. He told him, he met with him in the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. before this, and told him we have to change schooling if our people are going to have a good life in the future. It's just essential because what's going on isn't working. Basically, this is it. We have this ignominy, getting fooled. The top illustration is that the United States has this way of schooling, and that our Indian schools, we should go this way. It's mindful of the ignominy and the ducks, where he fools the ducks, he tricks the ducks, and they follow him. Well, in very much the same way, we are just following the schooling that has been done in the past and is ongoing right now. I bring this up because there is things that can be done, that can be changed. This is the State Tribal Education Compact Schools. This was performed by Senator John McCoy. He did this in July 8th of 2014. He got this bill passed where he gave tribes operating in that state there the opportunity to create a compact where they could change their schooling, and the state was going to work with them to do this, to make it more relevant and meaningful. This is gentleman right here, history and culture. That whole history is recognized by that state, and they've moved. This is, I think that you can say the same for South Dakota. This is the director of education, the state director of education in South Dakota, Melody Shaw. This is what she said. We had a meeting, and I was floored by it because I'd been advocating this. I was unable to do a lot, and my son met with the governor, and And he asked, can we sit down and have a meeting about this imperative to change education for get a more meaningful process going? Here's what she said. When we met with her, this is verbatim what she said. The education program that we've been trying in South Dakota isn't working. It's time we face the problem. It's time we own this problem. Before I leave this office, I want to say that we have changed. The governor and this office is committed to working with tribes to institute methods and strategies that can and will change the outcome for Indian children. That is a historic paradigm shift in just believing that we have the answer for you. You're going to just do what we do. So here is a bill that was passed, and what it simply does, it's just an opportunity for 3 schools. The governor put $1.8 million in his budget to fund 3 schools over, I guess right now what I've just learned is a 2-year period, and hopefully there's some flexibility, but over a 3-year period. If a community and a school would like to try something different, they can get $200,000 the first year, start looking at alternatives in schooling, understand their school just keeps going, but they start looking at schools, start going out, exploring, looking, investigation. And then after the first year, they can pick one out. They can pick out something that they would like to do that is different than what they're doing right now. And then the next years, they sharpen themselves up. They sharpen the saw. They sharpen their knives. They get better at it. They do professional development with the next money that's coming that they would get to give professional development, to get those teachers. The teachers already have good skills, but there are different ways to become a facilitator and put the subject matter and put the what you want into them. So they get better skills. So you teach them that, and after they get those, and then you can say, we're ready, we're going to implement, and you could do a shift. Now, this isn't to say that you would want to get rid of teachers, by no means, and administrators. It would be to try to get a school to say, let's try to investigate, explore, and try to bring in something different. If we want to. It's not forcing them to, but if you take the money, you're going to seriously look at this, at that. I just here give an example. This is one example of what can be done. This is a book by Charles Swan and Beatrice McGarvey. I know Chuck well. I think a lot of people in Indian country here know Charles. He was from Spearfish. I think he lives up there now. I think he lives in Colorado too, also someplace. But this is a way that when you take a look at the schooling process, this is, he says, it's called inevitable because we have a school system that was developed in 1892, and we live in a completely different era. And this book, and I'd encourage everybody to take this, our parents, everybody, read this book. It is one way that you can change a school around and do wonders for children. This is what he says. Dr. Schwann says, Dr. Schwann was asked to explore alternatives to the bureaucratic, time-based, industrial-age assembly line structure of schools. He says, we identified the major structural components of our time-worn systems. The components were grades, grade levels, students assigned to classes, class periods, bells, schedules, courses, curriculum, grading systems, report cards, and 9 months of school. We found that if we wanted to change, we had to do none of them. Think of that. You shouldn't, if you want to change your school, you got to throw them out. You say, that's impossible. Well, he says, if you really want change, you have to throw them out. So you have to take a whole different way of looking at it. So I'd just say right now, there is a school in this state that is doing this. Yeah, there's not many in this state. I'd say you can go to other places around America. There's a lot. It's starting to bubble now. There are more educators, parents, and communities that are realizing that we are in a archaic system, and so they're opting to do something different. Now, you just don't, you want to do it very intelligently, very, in a very good manner. Learn all you can, get everybody on board, and then do it. So I just say that it is entirely possible. Here are the schooling models of change that I'm aware of. I know them all. I've looked into this since I got my master's degree from Penn State University in 1984, and since that time, I've been looking into how can you change our school system. My master's thesis was a rationale and alternative to schooling. So I've been looking at this. The first one is my favorite. It'd be self-directed learning. That's where children they direct they're facilitated, but they have freedom to move in an environment and learn, and you facilitate. You just keep, and the mind wants to go learn. The mind, is naturally, it's the nari, the spirit wants to go out and do this. As soon as you see a little child, you'll see it starts moving around and it starts exploring its environment. The mind wants to, the spirit wants to go and learn all that is. And so if you just direct what that spirit wants to do, you'll find out what the particular talents and skills that each person has in that method of learning. There's project-based learning. These are, I'd say, probably the best school, as an example, would be in Colorado. If you could go see the Logan School, they start off right from the beginning. It just goes up to K-8. It's probably the best, arguably, probably, no doubt, the best school in Colorado for up to K-8. They ask the students, what do you want to do, right off the bat? And then they allow them to progress with what they want to do in a project basis. It needs explaining, and I think I'll probably do some more of these things, I hope, because we need to understand them. Ability-based is the model where you don't put kids in a time-segmented subject class for 50 minutes, then move them to the next one, and then the next day come back and do more advanced like this, because some of them will get it and some of them won't. And as you go along, there's a deficit that starts going. It's fine for the ones that get it, but there's a bunch that don't. But ability-based is that you have the system has a flexibility of moving along with the student as they go along. And you might say you can't do that. It's done. I know a lot of schools in Denver. There's Adams 50. Adams County's got a big school, big K through 12 school, 3 different buildings: elementary, junior high, and high school. It's pretty cool to see. Cooperative learning. This is really a good one. I think it's this one and self-directed learning are those two together create, I think, the best model for schools that a school can do for Indian children. Working together on tasks. Customized learning is the one that I just mentioned that is around. There's a state in Maine. The state of Maine has their state legislators have recognized that their schools in that state were implementing an old system. So they went by law to mandate that all their schools start moving forward into the future and start going with this customized type of learning. So it's changed. It's not just we need to do it for our Indian people and our Indian children to be successful, to get more out of our learning experience. But it's not just us that's saying this. It's starting to be recognized more and more. So there's change coming. I would say it's depending on when do we want to grab a hold of it and take it. We have an opportunity right now. The state of South Dakota has offered to fund 3 demonstration schools. Now, they don't lose any of their funding. I've heard that. They said, if you take that money, you lose all your funding. No, this helps you to change. But if we got 3 public schools operating on Indian reservations that have implemented change. Whether they're successful or not, I would say probably they're going to be successful, but what they become is models of change that other school systems operating on Indian reservations, Bureau, BIE, or public school can come together, can look at there and say, let's do that. And believe me, you do have enough money to do this. It just takes the school to come together and want to do something different and then investigate and explore. This law, this cool, wonderful development in South Dakota, offers it, gives it a jump start. Because it doesn't seem we understand that it's possible. We just keep doing the same thing. This is intelligence, this is Einstein, thought and philosophy, and putting together peace. You put those guys together, you got a much better functioning human being. A person that feels is moving along and feels good about themselves is less likely to be hostile to other people, and that's just the way our people were. It's just understand there are models that can be done. So you take these models that can do this, and you don't just we have special needs and special attributes as Lakota people. So you take a look at a different model that changes up the system, and then you bring in our culture and language. So it isn't exactly what, say, the Washichu is doing over there in that state, in California or whatever. But you take it and you say, okay, this is the model we choose, and we're going to put our own thought and philosophy into it. This is, it's, for an example, the thought and philosophy of a city bowl with self-directed learning. Montessori is kind of got a bad word because it's a method of schooling which is self-directed. But mainly, it's kind of got a bad understanding because only the rich have it. It costs like $17,000 a year to attend a Montessori school in America. So everybody says, ooh, that's a terrible way. But that lady developed her method of learning for poor people. And our schools, if we want to, we could train our people. We could, if we put our mind to it, we can do that model of education. On this reservation, you have this Waldorf school out here. That is another model of self-directed learning. There's Gazelle. So there's different models of self-directed learning. My favorite is Montessori, that method, because it's so well done. She was an absolute genius. But this is for investigation. A school system that might want to change should look at all the different models, and they should understand them well. Get a team of this money that the state has. I would suggest get teams that they get teachers together, administrators together, and form little teams with students and community members, maybe a committee of 6, and have them go study a model and know it, understand it, then go look at a model. Go look at a couple models. And another team has customized learning. They should understand it, read the books, then go and look at it. And then when they all come back, they talk it over, which model they like of the 5 models, then they say, let's try this one. Let's try ability-based model. Put our culture, language in that stuff, and then try a new model. So there's different ways to go. This is the dilemma that we have right now. This is Bill Mendoza. He's from Pine Ridge, Rosebud. He says he's the director of the White House Initiative on American Indian and Alaska Native Education. Indian schools operating on Indian reservations are not about tribal nation building. He said this past July 7, 2015. I heard him with my own ears. I listened to him. And I've said this for years. This is the schools. What are we doing with this land? This is the Pine Ridge Reservation, for instance. We have the Rosebud Reservation. We have the Stanton Reservation. What are those schools doing to advance this land and this nation forward? Actually, very, very little. Most everything that is done is there's a curriculum and there's stuff that comes in that the state and the federal people make us study. but it has nothing, almost nothing to do with us. We can do something with these models of education. Here's like what they say, Lakota standards. We should have a program of study that goes throughout the whole system, and you can do it within ability-based, project-based learning, self-directed learning, but you can guide the students in tribal resource development. We should know the resources of this reservation, how to develop them. What are they, and how can we do this? We have to know how to integrate our culture, that philosophy and thought that we have. We need to do that those are standards. How is the school meeting those standards? That should be lined out. Tribal language proficiency. If we lose this, we are but pages in a history book. We have to take this, and you can do this. So a school, what are your standards? How are you meeting them? So you should be able to be almost, how is school meeting them? Character development, man, this was big. This was the most important thing that our people thought should be working within each and every one of us. How is an individual tribal member moving in relation to the others? And that's character. That's character development. So we should do, for instance, like cooperative education does this a lot. If you do it right, you build character, taking care of one another, putting in multi-grade age system, not just putting all 8-year-olds in 3rd grade, put them in one class. You should have a multi-age group so that there's bigger students that can help littler students learn. They learn their role to take care of people, their friend, their what you could say is relatives, and you give them tasks to complete. So you get guys. It's just we have to develop character. So there's models of education that can help us out with that. Technological capabilities. Boy, we just there's a whole new world of the computer. There's so much that can be done with it, but we have to learn how to use it right. And it's an integral part of living in this day and age. So our Lakota people have to be astute. They have to be well versed and able to use it intelligently. Community ownership. That school, it should be thought of. It's almost like a foreign compound. We see the schools over there, our kids go over there, and we don't have much. You hear this time in and time out that when they talk about we don't have any parental support. If you implement these kinds of models and you involve everybody in it, we have to make these schools part of the community. These kids should be doing work in the communities. They should be given time to assist the community members in all kinds of different ways. But there's a lot of different ways you can do this. And the last thing is, this was the second most important thing when they talked to the elders long time ago. They said, we need character. Our people have to know how to be and how to be with each other. The next thing they said, we have to have good health. And we're not in a very good, healthy way. We have a lot of obesity. We don't eat right. We're not very active physically and emotionally. So this is an imperative that our schools, we should have a standards that mandate, that help our schools when they take a look at them in the end of the year. How well did you do? How can your students do 50 push-ups? Can you are you eating? Are you teaching the kids to eat right, to be healthy, and so forth? So these are standards that we could. Tribes should be developing their own schooling systems. Schools should be developing each student's unique talents and skills. It isn't that one size fits all type of deal. Each child is given special and unique attributes by the Creator, and those we should help each one of those develop, come out. So that's like project-based learning, and there's other ways. Self-directed learning does this. Why don't we do them? This is a joke, but the historical data and research tells me this schooling we are doing for our Indian children isn't working and never has. So why do I feel so much loyalty to it? Stockholm Syndrome. This is, I wonder why do we keep doing this, and why do we just keep going even though we know this kind of stuff? Well, it's kind of, the Stockholm syndrome was a phenomenon. It's a psychological phenomenon where a captive identifies with the people operating the captors, and after they, instead of being against them, they start identifying and start doing what they do. Stockholm syndrome. People might not like it, but it's, I just don't, we got to get it, we got to start doing our own thing. This is what is the future of our Indian nations in South Dakota? As you can see, in the state of Washington, they passed a Compact Act. And so that all those little tiny tribes there have an availability to do something. Now, we have a law, a bill that authorizes the exploration for 3 schools. But, if we get one of these reservations, one at, say, Sisseton, if they are lucky enough to get the money and start instituting change, if Flandreau gets one, if Cheyenne River gets one, then they start going, then it gives us examples. And I think if we change this thing, because we're not getting very much productivity out of our humanity, our Lakota being, our future gets better. This is it. This is what and who we are. This is all of it. This is how we understood it. We understood the universe. It's a beautiful understanding. The Sundance philosophy. It's about giving yourself for the people, offering yourself. And that's what, using the energy that you have, the character that you have, the energy that you got, and giving it to the people. Prayer. This is what we are. This is what we got to maintain. We got to think about being a new kind of Akichita, a new kind of soldier for our people. I would say, we got to start thinking about those BIA standards and the ones that the BIA, the state makes us follow. These schools that I'm talking about, they do it differently, but they still maintain accreditation with the state. So doing something different is entirely possible. It's being done right now all over America. Not in a great way, but we're just starting. The revolution in education is just starting to go. And it's time for our Indian people to embrace this, start looking at this, start thinking about this. We just send our kids to school and don't think much about it. Our teachers get it, and year after year we get this failing data. We're not doing very well. Well, it's time to start assessing this and thinking about it seriously. Is there something else we can do? And believe me, then after that, there's a fight, because it takes, not a literal fight, but it's about being smart. How do you get around them? How do you get around? How do you mold this to make it fit within the system? And it is done. I've seen it all over the place, all over America. I've been all over the place. Right now, I'd like to close just saying it's a beautiful new day. I never thought I'd see a day like this. I've been working at trying to implement change for schools. Virtually hardly anybody's listening. Shocked me so much, my socks fell down when the governor and the state of South Dakota Melody Shop, the director, said, we got to do something. We got to look at doing something else. Right now, I'd say this is April Fool's Day. Am I a fool for thinking like this? April 1st, 2016. This is a beautiful day and age that we're living in right now. We're on the brink of something new. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with it? Again, I used to work at Little Wound School, and Henry Big Boy was on the board then, and I always remember him saying, this is back in the 70s, he's long gone by now, but he said that anytime you're talking about education, and that means you're dealing with the future, how will the people be in the future? You better pray. You better pray for guidance. And that's what our people were, very spiritual people. We have to have a vision for a better tomorrow. Thank you for listening. As we go, I would like to say that perhaps I will do another one of these sessions that explains these in more detail. How do you actually do this? What do these things look like? The damage that's being done, and what can we do? The various models that can be done. So thank you for listening. Have a good day. Catch you 2 hours.